Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, there is usually this unspoken contract when you pick up a novel about the future.
Right, a safety net.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You, the reader, you agree to suspend your disbelief, and the author agrees to take you on a ride. Maybe it's a dystopia with zombies, or maybe it's some sleek sci-fi world with flying cars. But there is always that safety barrier.
Because you know it isn't real, it's escapism.
Right. It's safe because it's clearly distinct from your Monday morning commute.
Yeah.
But today, we are diving into a book that completely shreds that contract.
It really does. It doesn't feel like fiction at all.
No, it doesn't even feel like a prediction. It feels like a memory.
Yeah, memory of things that just haven't happened yet.
Exactly. It feels so inevitable that you start checking the news while you're reading it to see if these things have already started. We are talking about Stephen Markley's massive, relentless novel, The Deluge.
And I have to say, right up front, this book hurt to read.
It's heavy.
It is a hyper-object of a novel. We are talking nearly 900 pages of granular, terrifying American collapse.
And the scariest part isn't even the natural disasters. I mean, there are plenty of those, but...
It's the politics.
Yes. Mark Mullikley has written what a lot of critics are calling a fictional history.
Right. He treats the years from roughly 2024 to 2040 with the exact same rigor a historian would use for, say, the Civil War.
Or the Great Depression. It's a thriller, sure, but it's a thriller about the slow, grinding disintegration of American systems.
Political, economic, ecological, they all go down together.
And at the bottom of it all, literally at the very bottom of the ocean, is the engine driving this entire collapse.
Yeah, we have to talk about the one thing.
Right, the scientific MacGuffin of the book. Except it isn't really a MacGuffin because it's completely real.
We need to talk about the clathrate gun.
Or as the characters in the book call it, the dirty yellow ice.
Dirty yellow ice.
See, to me that sounds gross, but it doesn't sound apocalyptic. Dirty yellow ice just sounds like something you would step over in a parking lot in February.
If only it were that harmless. So for everyone listening, picture the ocean floor.
Okay.
Deep, incredibly high pressure, near freezing temperatures. Down there, you have these methane gas molecules that are physically trapped inside cages of water ice.
Like a lattice?
Exactly. It's called methane hydrate, or clathrate. And to the naked eye, it just looks like slush.
Okay, so we have gas trapped in ice deep underwater. Why is this specifically the stuff of nightmares?
Because methane is a superheater. In the short term, it is far more efficient at trapping heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide.
Like significantly more, right?
Oh, massively more. Right now, that ice is perfectly stable because the deep ocean is freezing cold.
Okay.
But if we warm the oceans,
Which we are currently doing.
which we are doing by burning fossil fuels, yes. If that happens, the ice starts to destabilize.
The cage breaks.
The cage breaks. The gas bubbles up. It hits the atmosphere heats up, the ocean absorbs that extra heat. And
More cages break.
exactly, more gas releases. It creates a feedback loop. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that you literally cannot stop once it gets going. It turns the Earth into a hot box.
And this isn't just some theoretical doomsday scenario the author made up, is it?
No, not at all. It has happened before. Markley anchors the science of the book in a real geological event called the PTM.
The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum.
Yes.
Let's unpack that a bit, because the main character we follow, Tony Pietrus, he is absolutely obsessed with this event.
Right, so about 55 million years ago, the Earth heated up incredibly rapidly. We are talking 5 to 6 degrees Celsius.
Which is massive on a planetary scale.
It caused a huge mass extinction, and for a really long time, scientists debated what actually caused it.
Right, was it volcanoes or a comet, something like that.
Exactly, but the math just didn't add up. There wasn't enough volcanic activity in the rock record to explain that massive of a carbon spike.
So this is where the dirty yellow ice comes in.
You got it. The only reservoir of carbon massive enough, and specifically light enough, referring to the specific carbon isotopes we find to explain that event, is methane hydrates.
Wow.
Nature essentially pulled the trigger 55 million years ago. The terrifying premise of the deluge is that humanity is pulling that trigger again right now.
And once the bullet leaves the chamber, you can't put it back.
No, you can't.
So those are the stakes. Total planetary upheaval.
Yeah.
But what makes this book so gripping is that Markley doesn't just hit you with charts and graphs.
Right. He grounds it entirely in human experience.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to trace this unraveling through the intersecting lives of 4 main viewpoints in the book.
We've got a scientist who runs the math.
A radical activist blowing up pipelines.
A recovering drug addict just trying to survive the poverty line.
And a terrifyingly charismatic preacher who manages to spin the apocalypse into pure political gold.
It is the intersection of these specific lives that shows us how the collapse isn't just about the weather getting bad.
Right. It's about how our democracy, our economy, and honestly our collective sanity degrade right alongside the climate.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into section 1, the man who actually sees the spark, Tony Pietrus.
Tony is our entry point into the novel. We meet him way back in 2013.
Which feels like a lifetime ago now.
It really does. He's a scientist at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and he is definitely not your typical action hero.
No, not at all.
He's just a guy crunching numbers, running these things called Monte Carlo simulations.
You know, I always hear that term in sci-fi and tech thrillers, Monte Carlo simulations. It always sounds like he's at a casino gambling.
Well, in a very grim way, he is gambling on the future.
How so?
It's essentially a computational algorithm. It uses random sampling to predict the behavior of incredibly complex systems. He's running thousands and thousands of scenarios to see exactly how those deep-sea methane hydrates will behave under slightly changing temperatures.
And I'm guessing the results are not great.
The results are utterly terrifying. He sees the instability right there on his screen.
But at this point in 2013, he is still just an academic,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. He's worried about getting tenure. He's stressed about grant funding. He's a perfectly normal, slightly neurotic guy who just happens to have a very scary data set on his laptop.
Right.
And then the mail arrives.
This is such a brilliant, inciting incident. It's 2013. It is post-9/11 America. The memory of the real anthrax attacks from 2001 is still very much alive in the national psyche.
Oh, totally. So Tony opens this plain envelope in his office, and inside there is a letter with these aggressive block letters.
What does it say?
It says, "You will be charged with the greatest fraud ever perpetrated."
And then the powder spills out.
Right. This yellowish-white powder goes everywhere, gets on his hands, all over his desk.
And his reaction to this is so visceral. It's so real.
He freezes completely, and what I love is that he notices the absurdity of the situation first. He actually sees a typo in the threat letter.
A missing apostrophe.
Yes. The word Yule is missing the apostrophe. He is literally staring at what he thinks is a weaponized biological agent, his own imminent death, and a tiny part of his brain is annoyed by the sender's bad grammar.
That is such an incredibly human detail.
It really grounds the whole scene. He doesn't go into John McClane mode. He becomes a terrified, panicked man.
He runs to the sink.
He runs to the sink and starts scrubbing his hands with water so hot it actually scalds his skin. And in that moment, his mind races to his wife, Gail.
Yeah.
He thinks about his 2 daughters. He calls the FBI, completely convinced that he is already a dead man walking. He just sits there in his office waiting for the physical symptoms to start.
And then we get the twist. It isn't anthrax.
Not even close. It's cornmeal.
Cornmeal. Just crushed up corn.
Yeah. Some right-wing internet troll sent it to him just to scare him because of his climate research.
But here is why this moment matters so much to the narrative. It's not just a cheap gotcha moment for the reader.
No, it's a profound psychological pivot for Tony.
Right. While he is sitting there, essentially waiting to die from what he thinks is anthrax, his mind sort of snaps.
He has this hallucination, or maybe a vision is a better word. He sees the walls of his lab expanding outward into the deep ocean. He is suddenly surrounded by what he calls the blue darkness.
And he describes seeing the bubbles, right?
Yes. The methane bubbles rising up from the seafloor, he calls them little farts in the dark.
Which is both grotesque and kind of poetic.
It is. He realizes in that moment that while he was completely paralyzed by the terror of the cornmeal, which was entirely fake, the real executioner is down there in the dark, the methane.
The cornmeal essentially breaks the protective barrier between him and his data.
Exactly. He doesn't just know the math intellectually anymore. He feels the extinction in his bones.
It radicalizes him, at least internally. He realizes that everyone else out there is totally distracted by the cornmeal.
Right, by the noise.
Yeah, by partisan politics, celebrity gossip, daily trivialities, while the actual literal ocean is getting ready to boil, and that realization just fundamentally changes who he is.
It creates this state of mind he calls the Malv dread.
The Malv dread. That phrase really sticks with you.
It's so evocative. It's this very specific color of depression and absolute terror.
Yeah.
It's a background hum that never, ever goes away for him from that day forward.
And we see this dread affect his family deeply. He has his wife, Gail, who tries so hard to keep him grounded.
She's wonderful. She jokes with him. She actually starts calling him Anthrax at dinner parties just to lighten the mood.
But Markley doesn't let the reader have that comfort for very long. because Gail gets sick.
Yes, she gets metastatic breast cancer. And this is so crucial metaphorically for the book.
How so?
Well, Tony is spending his life studying a planetary cancer, essentially, a massive Earth system turning against itself and its inhabitants. And simultaneously, he has to watch his wife's own cells turn against her.
Wow, yeah.
Her eventual death just strips him of his only anchor to the normal world. He is left completely alone with the Maw of Dread and his two daughters.
And those daughters, Holly and Catherine, they really represent two very different paths for the future, don't they?
They do. You have Holly, who he calls the older one. She is very studious, serious, tries to play by the rules of a society that is breaking down.
And then there's Catherine.
Right, Catherine, who he affectionately calls Galizi, or the mother of dragons.
That's great.
She is wild, she's difficult, she's brilliant, but totally unpredictable. And Tony looks at these two girls, and he doesn't see a normal future for them. He doesn't see college graduations and weddings and grandkids.
He sees managed decline.
He knows with absolute mathematical certainty that they are going to inherit a broken, hostile world.
So, while Tony is essentially paralyzed by this macro-level knowledge, there are other people in the country who are actively trying to fight back.
Which brings us to section 2 of our deep dive, the activists.
Shane and Murdoch.
Yes. This is where the book shifts gears entirely. We go from the sterile academic lab to the absolute grit of the street level. We meet them in 2014.
At a Bob Evans restaurant in Ohio, of all places. And can we just take a second to talk about the incredible atmosphere Mark Bonkley paints in this scene? It's incredibly bleak. The faux barn aesthetic, the geriatric patrons eating eggs, the smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner.
It feels like a eulogy for a very specific kind of 20th century America. It's a landscape of total decay.
And sitting in the middle of it is Murdoch. He's a war veteran, an EOD tech explosive ordnance disposal who served multiple tours in Iraq.
And sitting across from him is Shame. She's a waitress, a grassroots organizer, and she is sharp as a tack.
Murdoch really represents the deep disillusionment of the post-9/11 generation in this book. He had this line where he says, "Barbarity is a powerful thing."
Yeah, he draws a direct line between the massive failure of the Iraq War and the looming climate crisis. He says something like, we opened a can of worms over there that's going to writhe for 20, 30, 50 years.
Right.
He realizes that the people in charge, the massive systems governing the country, are just fundamentally incompetent and corrupt.
And that shared realization of incompetence is what drives them both toward radicalism. Shane actually recruits him into this underground group called 6 Degrees.
Now, we need to be clear here for the listeners. 6 Degrees, they aren't the people out holding cardboard signs on the sidewalk or signing online petitions.
No, they are way past that. They are interested in hard sabotage.
This brings up a major theme in the novel. The logic of defensive violence.
Right. The book poses this really uncomfortable question. If the state and massive fossil fuel corporations are knowingly, with full data, destroying the biosphere, literally killing the future, is blowing up a pipeline an act of terrorism?
Or is it self-defense?
Exactly. And to be clear, we aren't taking a side on that here, but that is the central philosophical debate that absolutely tears the activist group apart from the inside.
You see it perfectly in the conflict between two characters in the group, Kai and Alan.
Break it down for us.
So Kai is the pure voice of youthful rage. He is tired of losing. He says, we are the weathermen, and they are finally afraid of us. He actively wants to escalate the violence.
He argues that the people in power, the carbon profiteers, need to feel actual physical fear for their own safety before they will change anything.
Right. But then you have Alan. He's an older, more seasoned professor type. He argues vehemently that if they cross that line, if they start actually killing human beings, they instantly lose any moral high ground.
They become the monsters they're trying to stop.
Exactly. And the book is incredibly smart because it doesn't feed us an easy answer. Instead, it meticulously details the horrific cost of living this life.
The shadow life.
Yes. Living entirely off the grid, using burner phones that you smash every few weeks, the absolute suffocating paranoia.
Shane has this great internal monologue where she describes trying to survive in the crosswinds of surveillance capitalism.
It is nearly impossible to disappear in the modern world. Every single license plate reader at an intersection, every facial recognition camera outside a pharmacy, every credit card swipe, it all tracks you.
The state is actively hunting these activists. But what makes it so terrifying is that while the FBI is hunting them, the environment itself is also hunting them.
Oh, the dust storm scene.
Yes. Shane is driving through the Midwest, and it feels like something out of Mad Max. It's genuinely apocalyptic.
This isn't just a windy day with some dirt in the air. Markley describes the sky as having bonfire heavens. The atmosphere turns this diseased, bruised orange color.
And the dust is described as a particulate mist that just completely swallows the interstate highway.
It's like a sensory deprivation tank, but made entirely of dry topsoil.
It's the Great American Desert, actively expanding in real time. The agricultural breadbasket of the world is literally turning into a sandbox while she's driving through it.
And for Shane, it totally reinforces why they're fighting. The physical world is actively collapsing around their ears.
But here's the tragedy of the book. While the physical world is collapsing, the social and informational world is completely fragmenting.
People aren't coming together to face the storm.
No. Which brings us to section 3, and honestly one of the most disturbing characters I've ever read, the pastor.
If Tony is the brain of the story and Shane is the fist, the pastor is the sickness.
But he's also a symptom of that sickness.
Absolutely.
So the pastor starts out as kind of a joke, right?
Yeah, he's a failed B-list Hollywood actor. He gets canceled for making some aggressively anti-woke comments on social media.
Right.
He feels immensely aggrieved by this, so he completely reinvents himself as an evangelical prophet.
And again, keeping our neutral lens here, the book uses him to explore how political opportunists hijack real crises. Because the pastor understands something fundamental about human nature that the climate scientists totally miss.
Yes. When people are deeply frightened, when their basement floods for the 3rd time in a year, or their crops fail, or they can't afford groceries, they do not want to see a line graph about carbon parts per million.
No, they want a story.
They want a narrative that makes sense of their pain. They want meaning.
And the pastor provides that meaning. He doesn't deny that the disasters are happening. He leans into them. He weaponizes them.
Right. He tells his followers, these wildfires aren't caused by greenhouse gases. They are the literal judgment of God upon a sinful nation.
And by sinful, he specifically targets political liberals, the LGBTQ+ community, secular institutions. It is the ultimate grift.
He uses the real terror of the apocalypse to consolidate immense personal and political power.
But what makes this uniquely futuristic, or near-futuristic, is that he isn't just doing this in a sweaty tent revival somewhere. He's doing it in VR.
This is the tech angle of the novel, and it's brilliant. Slapdish.
Slapdish.
In the world of the book, Slapdish is the ultimate social media platform that essentially eats the entire internet. As the physical reality outside gets uglier, more dust storms, hotter days, gray skies, people retreat inward.
Into the headsets.
Exactly. It's the total fragmentation of shared reality. You literally have people whose physical homes are drowning in floodwaters, but mentally they are logged into a digital world where the pastor is telling them they are righteous warriors.
They are heroes in the simulation while they are victims in reality.
It completely explains how a crumbling society can steadfastly refuse to fix itself. Half the population isn't even mentally living in the real world anymore.
And because of this massive rabid following, the pastor becomes a legitimate political kingmaker.
He influences major elections. He incites real-world violence.
There's that harrowing scene where he essentially orchestrates the burning of koans, which sparks massive deadly riots.
He represents the absolute opportunism of chaos.
But for every powerful opportunist like the pastor, there are thousands of normal people who just get crushed under the wheels. The pawns.
Which brings us to section 4.
Keeper.
Man, Keeper's storyline just breaks my heart.
He is the ultimate common man in this narrative. He is a recovering drug addict, living in deep poverty, trying desperately to support his family in what Markley describes as the Walmart class.
He is trying so incredibly hard to do the right thing. He loves his wife, Raquel. He adores his son, Toby. But the macroeconomic forces are just grinding him into dust.
Because the climate shocks cause massive supply chain issues, which leads to rampant inflation.
Right. Food becomes prohibitively expensive. Rent is impossible. He works exhausting hours and still can't keep his head above water.
And this is where the book makes a really crucial, chilling argument about how fascism takes root in a society. Fascism doesn't arrive with a marching band and a manifesto.
It arrives with a grocery bag.
Exactly. When people are starving, they will listen to whoever offers them food.
Keeper gets manipulated so slowly, so insidiously. It actually starts with a character named Reverend Andrada.
Right, who is framed as a genuinely good, community-focused religious figure.
He is. He legitimately tries to help Keeper. But through Andrade's network, Keeper accidentally gets exposed to the deeper political crossfire. He ends up on the radar of some very dangerous people.
A militia, Shambari.
Yes, heavily armed white supremacist militias start stepping in to fill the massive void left by the failing federal government. And the terrifying part is, they don't start with hate speech when they recruit Keeper.
No, it's totally transactional at first.
They say, hey, we see you're struggling. We can help you. We have cash work. We can protect your neighborhood when the police don't show up.
They prey on his desperation as a father. But eventually, the bill comes due.
They want a return on their investment. They demand that keepers start doing their dirty work.
They want him infiltrating leftist activist groups, planting false evidence, acting as an informant.
And when he finally tries to back out, when he hesitates, the friendly neighbor mask comes totally off.
There is that scene in the snow.
It chills me to the bone every time I think about it.
This is the exact moment where the unspoken economic transaction becomes a very explicit racial ultimatum.
Shambari, the militia leader, knows that Keeper is close friends with someone who has a mixed-race child. And Shambari threatens him using that child.
Yeah.
He says, completely deadpan, a black baby is not something we can allow for.
It's so unbelievably cold. He isn't screaming or raging. He states it like he's citing a zoning ordinance.
And that's the true horror of it. It perfectly illustrates how ecological collapse fuels tribalism. When there literally isn't enough clean water or safe high ground for everyone, that us versus them mentality becomes lethal.
Keeper isn't an activist. He doesn't know anything about atmospheric methane. He just wants his little boy to survive the winter. And the militia weaponizes that love to trap him.
Okay, so we have the paralyzed scientists, the radicalized activists, the grifting demagogues, and the trapped victims. And then we hit the 2030s.
Section 5, the unraveling.
This is where every single one of these distinct threads crashes together in a spectacular way.
Up until the 2030s, the book shows us what scholars call the slow violence of climate change. But in this section, it becomes incredibly fast violence. It's a cascade failure.
We finally see the big weather events the models predicted. The Great Eastern Flood.
The descriptions here are just relentless. The entire eastern seaboard is inundated. Washington, D.C. takes on massive amounts of water.
And Mark Linkley goes out of his way to detail the economic domino effect of this. He talks about the collapse of the Case-Shiller Index.
The housing market index.
Right. Because think about it. Who is going to buy a 30-year mortgage on a house that models say will be entirely underwater in 5 years?
Nobody. So the property values drop to zero overnight.
And then the major insurers pull out completely. You can't get flood insurance. Because you can't get insurance, the banks immediately stop lending.
The entire coastal economy, trillions of dollars of wealth, just evaporates into thin air.
And on the other side of the country, you have the Los Angeles megafire.
It creates a state of permanent, waking siege. The environment is no longer just the setting of the story. It becomes the primary antagonist.
But incredibly, right in the middle of all this absolute chaos, a figure rises up who actually offers a tangible path out.
Kate Morris.
Kate Morris. She becomes the face of this massive grassroots movement called a Fierce Blue Fire.
She is highly charismatic, brilliant, and deeply pragmatic. She's trying to pass a piece of sweeping legislation called PIRA.
The Pollution Reduction Infrastructure and Refund Act.
It's basically a Green New Deal on steroids, a massive restructuring of the American economy.
And for a brief, shining moment in the text, it genuinely feels like it might work. Markley lets the reader hope.
She fills the National Mall with millions of supporters. She unites fractured coalitions, and she frames the crisis so perfectly for the public.
She has this incredible speech where she says, "We are currently running the two most consequential experiments in the history of humankind simultaneously."
One is the reckless dumping of greenhouse gases into a closed atmosphere.
And the other is the fragile experiment of representative democracy. And her big question to the crowd is, can we successfully use one to solve the other?
But the opposition to her is feral. The carbon lobbyists, the entrenched politicians, the pastor zealots, they wage a total war against her. They label her an eco-terrorist on national television.
And then we hit 2037.
The assassination.
It is an absolute gut punch to read. You spend hundreds of pages with this woman believing she is the savior.
She's in this mundane office building in Staten Island.
And it's just over in a flash.
A mass shooting. It isn't even portrayed as some grand, shadowy conspiracy in that exact moment. It just feels like the ambient, boiling violence of the era finally catching up to her.
But the systemic impact of her death is catastrophic. It instantly deflates the entire movement.
It creates a massive vacuum of hope. And politically, the country just completely goes off the rails.
We enter the 2036 election debacle.
Talk about a nightmare scenario. You have the incumbent, President Love, who has strong authoritarian leanings.
You have the pastor actively calling for armed insurrection on Slapdish.
You have voting systems completely failing because of extreme weather blackouts and targeted cyber attacks.
It is total systemic chaos. You have rival presidents hiding in the White House claiming victory. You have the governor of Kansas executing political prisoners. The actual threat of tactical nuclear weapons is put on the table.
It is the complete breakdown of the rule of law. Eventually, a compromise candidate named Warren Hammy manages to take the oath of office, but really only to stop a hot civil war.
The American experiment, as we know it today, is effectively broken.
And amidst all this massive, loud, historical noise, the narrative quietly takes us back to Tony Pietrus, the scientist who saw it all coming back in 2013.
Tony's dying.
And the irony of his situation is just painfully cruel.
He has advanced colon cancer, and it went completely undiagnosed for way too long because he was just too busy working.
He was too busy worrying about the death of the world to go get a basic medical checkup.
The rot was literally growing inside him the entire time he was screaming about the rot in the atmosphere.
So he's lying in this hospital bed, watching the political collapse on the news.
And he reflects deeply on that old feeling, the mauve dread.
He finally realizes there isn't going to be a happy ending.
No, the deep ocean has warmed too much. The methane hydrates are actively melting. The feedback loop he modeled decades ago has officially started.
He uses this chilling metaphor. He talks about the coffin lid closing on humanity.
His final lingering thoughts are about his daughter and the reality of the future she has to live in.
What is his ultimate realization there?
He realizes that this climate crisis isn't a discrete event. It doesn't have a clear beginning, middle, and end like a world war. It is a completely new state of being.
Right.
He says, this crisis is effectively our eternity.
Future generations will literally never know a world without this specific, suffocating fear.
They are born inside the coffin. They will only know a world of managed decline where they visit holographic zoos to see extinct animals and live in a state of permanent triage.
That is just a tremendously heavy realization. But to the book's credit, it doesn't end on a note of total human extinction. It ends with an outro chapter titled The Seventh Day.
It serves as a reflection point. The characters are looking back at 2036, which they call the Year of Wonders.
The year the old world officially died. Markley is arguing here that apocalypse isn't a single Hollywood explosion.
Right. It isn't an asteroid hitting the Earth. It is a long, agonizingly slow grind of diminishing returns.
And it leaves us with this incredibly provocative thought about human adaptation.
Yes, because people do survive. Shane survives. Tony's daughters survive. But they are fundamentally changed by it.
There's this quiet scene near the end where Shane is driving with her teenage daughter, Lolly.
The physical world outside the car window is just ruined. It's dusty, it's sweltering hot, it's gray. And Lolly is just sitting there staring at her device, getting visibly annoyed by her mother's nostalgia for green trees and wild animals.
Shane looks at her and asks, "How can you not care about what we lost?"
And Lolly just shrugs and says, "It doesn't matter. We have the other worlds now."
Referring to the digital simulations.
Right. That is the ultimate tragedy of the novel. We destroyed the physical world, so the next generation just permanently moved their consciousness to the fake one.
We normalize the horror.
We do. We normalize the orange skies. We normalize the rolling blackouts. We normalize the political assassinations.
Just like the characters in the book, we adjust to the new, terrible normal, day by day, inch by inch, until we forget what the world used to look like.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap this up, what is the actual mission of this deep dive? Why put ourselves and you listening at home through this emotional ringer?
Because Stephen Markley is violently trying to shake us awake. He is showing us the exact timeline we are currently walking on.
Right. He is looking right at the reader and saying, this is exactly what the next 2 decades look like if we do not radically change course right now.
It's a warning. A brilliantly researched, very loud, very long warning.
And it asks every single one of us a very direct question. Do we really want to keep pulling the trigger on that dirty yellow ice?
Because once it melts, there's no going back.
Well, on that sobering note, that concludes our deep dive into The Deluge. It is a book that will fundamentally change how you look at the ocean, how you look at politics, and how you watch the evening news, probably forever.
I completely agree. The bubbles are already rising.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We will catch you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other out there.